But before that, The Snake in the E-Garden of Cyberspace is the title of this story by Ezekiel Kralin, the latest installment of the ongoing and seemingly interminable story of two little dogs, Flacco and Lucky, and their master, Deke, not Zeke, but Deke. And there's another Deke involved somewhere out there in the world. I'm not going to recap any of this. All of these stories sound alike to me, so what would be the point? Email correspondence from January 31st to February 3rd, Ezekiel Kralin writes. Subject, Great News Zeke, from Mike Sears. Okay, well, that's not alike. Previously, this conversation with Mike Sears has been relegated to the MCN discussion listserv, which I don't read, and has spilled over into the MCN announced listserv. But let me just start this over and stop commenting on it. Ezekiel Kralin wrote, Email correspondence from January 31st to February 3rd. Subject, Great News Zeke, from Mike Sears. I was in a bar in North Beach yesterday. I met this big black guy who used to be an oil driller in Texas. As I was a fracker in Pennsylvania, we talked about the oil biz. I told him of this homosexual I heard of who was deliberately spreading AIDS to young black men in retaliation for a black guy giving him AIDS. This seemed to make him very angry. I gave him your address, room number, and telephone number you were kind enough to give me. He said he and a friend were going to pay you a visit and have a talk with you about this. I gave him the number to my burner cell phone and asked him to leave a message as to how his visit and talk with you went. Now, you can print this and take it to any law enforcement agency or DA you want and see what they do. Nothing. You'll get as far with that as Dennis's repeated attempts to get me arrested and fired. Goodbye, Zeke. Back to the spam folder with you. The only reason I unblocked you was for the misogynist disrespect you treated Tanya with. This has nothing to do with you being gay. It has to do with the fact you're such a despicable excuse for a human being. You take delight in others having cancer. Same way your fuck buddy Alvin said about my murdered nephew. This is simply disgust over you two mentally ill homosexuals taking delight in the misfortune of others, then go running off playing your homophobia victim card when anyone says anything about just what pathetic, despicable excuses for human beings the two of you are. Subject, so that was by Mike Sears. So this is Ezekiel writing. My latest email from Carlisle. Thought I'd share a short email from my friend out of Boston. Wait till you read the last paragraph. From Carlisle Lamburn, are American psychopaths. I think that Putin is probably doing more behind the scenes to undermine the United States and the West than hardly anyone realizes. A lot of conservative cockroaches adore Putin in spite of his obvious murderous character because, 1, he cozies up to Christians like Trump. 2, he's anti-gay. 3, the American right envies Russia as a white country. 4, Putin helped Trump to power. 5, the American right wants a dictatorship like Putin's, not a democracy. David Duke had an article entitled, Is Russia the Key to White Survival? Putin needs to die. The right that sucks up to him is fascist and treasonous. Good luck with the lawsuit. Concerning the building manager, as Moms Mabley once said, they say you shouldn't say nothing about the dead unless it's good. He's dead? Good. My latest email from Carlisle. Date February 1st. Watson wrote, every word is perfect. Is this the same guy who was showing right-wing tendencies a while back, or am I thinking of someone else? I replied, that's someone else, Chuck of Philly. This is Carlisle Lamburn, my gay activist ally of many years, since 1997. I've shared with you before, now and then, a letter from him, but it's been a while since the last one. Watson wrote, and is the building manager, in fact, dead? I replied, there has been no notice posted anywhere in my building to that effect. It's possible he's still alive, but I haven't seen hide or hair of him since that ambulance carted someone away, and I heard his voice answering medical questions from the floor above moments before that. If he's alive and returns, I can't imagine him continuing as our manager. He was that deteriorated last bunch of times I saw him. Whether he's dead or alive, we're going to get a new manager soon, in my estimate. The suspense is killing me, like a slow-motion grade B horror flick while waiting for a pizza delivery. Subject: I just got this interesting email from my attorney. Nothing to do with the lawsuit. Date February 2nd. Magdalena Elvensborn wrote, "Good afternoon, Mr. Kralin. I hope you are doing well. If I remember correctly, you told me once that you had issues with getting coverage for dental implants. Is that right? What is your insurance again?" I replied, "Hello, Ms. Elvensborn. I'm doing quite well, thanks. I hope you are too. Dentical, part of the Medi-Cal program. I am now with the San Francisco Healthcare Plan. My concern is over the limitations on what kind of dental care I am eligible for. When I last looked 1 year ago, Dentical does not cover partial dentures, only full. So I would wind up having more teeth pulled with even less in my mouth. Otherwise, so much oral surgery needs to be done at this point, thanks to the high share of cost that went on for over a decade and left me without any dental services. I don't think I'd care for all the misery that would entail for many months to restore my mouth. But no, I'm not looking for dental implants, and I don't think that's covered anyway. I'd be more than happy with a decent set of choppers. However, it is policy under Dentical to not pull any teeth that can be saved. I'd say I have maybe 4 teeth remaining that would qualify, but then I'd need partial dentures, which are not covered. I'd much rather have all remaining teeth pulled and get full uppers and lowers. However, in light of all the surgery I'd also require, I'm not so sure I'd go through with it anyway if I could get those teeth pulled and have full dentures. So it's complicated, to say the least. Thanks for your concern just the same." Subject: 5:30 a.m., and then 3 bang marks after that. Date February 3rd. That's the time Deke woke me up to collect his electronics yesterday morning, Thursday, for once again he wound up sleeping outside my building with his doggies, and it was an awfully chill night. Fortunately, they all slept wrapped in a sleeping bag I provided. Nor do I mind much being awakened at such an early hour, for it shows me he really is sheltered at that tiny cabin village, because he wants to return for breakfast and or meet the 48-hour limit of being away in order to stay there. In other words, stirring me out of a deep slumber from time to time is a small price for me to pay in exchange. Furthermore, I imagine it's difficult to adapt to an indoor sanctuary under semi-strict house rules after living on the street for at least a decade and a half, and thus sleeping outside now and then, especially right on my block, makes this big change in his world more palatable. Hanging out near my residence is the closest thing he's had to a real home for many years, and something terribly nice happened during this last meet-up late in the evening, which was Wednesday night. Deke crashed out around 8:30 p.m. beside the pups resting on a sleeping bag covered by my Sherpa jacket with a broken zipper. After leaving me with them for almost 3 hours, even though he said he'd return in a few minutes, along with that granny cart, which I surmise is a better option than a shopping cart, since he can then hop on the transit to get around faster, and it may possibly be acceptable to keep at the shelter, whereas a shopping cart is verboten. Anyway, when I stepped out a bit later to check on the doggies, that they're still covered and warm, a 60-ish lesbian woman with white hair and glasses seated at an outdoor super-duper table addressed me when I finished administering to the Brindlekin. "Do they have any water?" I told them yes, they do, then walked back to their spot and lifted the bowl so she could see for herself. "Oh, I'm sorry," she remarked. "I didn't see it there." "No problem," I replied. "Your concern is appreciated." I then told her a bit about my relationship with Deke, that we've been friends for 15 years, and since he's adopted the pooches around 3 years ago, I helped care for them, including food and blankets. He does have a place to stay now, in that tiny home village 4 blocks from here on Gough Street, I assured her, but it's barely been 2 weeks, and it's a shock to live indoors after being on the street so long, so he still sleeps outside 2 or 3 days a week, though I wish he wouldn't for the sake of the little hounds. But he can be stubborn, so it's best to show patience as he adapts to his new digs. "Oh, I see," she replied. "Nice of you to be there for him and to watch over his dogs." "Of course," I concurred. "Those mutts are my best friends. I wouldn't have it any other way, and thanks for asking." I then returned hovel and to my online activities, where I was busy downloading YouTube horror tales from my nighttime slumber. About 20 minutes later, I heard Flacco barking. I realized a gaggle of noisy skateboarders were rattling by, so I peered out the window to see that lady I just spoke to standing in the middle of the sidewalk to guide the skaters around where the pups and Deke were parked. I quickly donned my jacket, shoes, and cap and rushed downstairs to calm Flacco down and get her back into the sleeping bag. "Thanks," I addressed the gray-haired woman. "I couldn't get out here fast enough." After tucking Flacco back in, I turned to speak with her again, seeing as she was amenable to further conversation. At this time, she was now in the company of a younger lady, her daughter perhaps, around 42. I told them about my Brindlekin Tales, where to find it on the web, and a bit about my lawsuit, including the death of my two main protagonists, which, of course, includes the building manager. "Oh, that's funny," said the younger one, and then took it back. "Well, not really, I guess." "No, it's funny, all right," I told her. "I feel like since my homeless friend and I reunited over his adopting these doggies that I was suddenly plunked into the middle of a fairy tale, with all the monsters I have to fight off that entails, as well as the many benevolent characters, including one outstanding attorney." We spoke several minutes more, my gladly answering their questions about the activism as a homeless advocate, as well as about Deke and canines. But before they took off, I emphasized to them how my assisting a homeless friend to find shelter and caring for the pooches is one of the greatest, most fulfilling acts I've ever done. But last night wasn't all peaches and cream, as Deke tossed yet another challenge at my feet. Shortly before he settled in for the night, he hollered for me to come down. So I did, only to see my Sherpa jacket tossed a few feet away with the hounds now uncovered. "It has bugs," he exclaimed. I picked it up to examine the lining, which was fluffy and white, and did not find one. "They were in the sleeves, 3 of them," he declared, "hopping around. I don't want any bugs in my place. Don't ever bring anything like that for the dogs again." I didn't argue the point, but just shrugged my shoulders and carried the jacket back upstairs. I thought he was also going to remove the sleeping bag, but thank Glob he didn't, as the dogs would otherwise shiver all night long with only a sheet of cardboard to lie down on and their master to cuddle up to. To my surprise, Deke did not rant on about it as I departed with jacket in hand. Just dropped the matter as quickly as he brought it up. Though I suspect he made that up, seeing as bedbugs do not hop, nor did he make a fuss about the sleeping bag. But since he now lives indoors for the most part, bedbugs are a concern, so I will be sure any further doggy bedding I provide has been heat-treated and sealed in a trash bag while stashed in my room, and I'll only open the bag once I'm outside, then rebag the items before entering my building. I only hope Deke will respect that new arrangement and not refuse to let me bring the pups anything that keeps them warm. Next time I give him sweaters, they'll be sealed in their original packaging. And I can even hand him a new sleeping bag, also sealed, that he can keep in his cabin and bring with him when he plans to stay outdoors for the night. Unless whenever he'd like me to launder it, in which case, after running it through the dryer on high for an hour, I'll immediately seal it in a bag before leaving the laundromat. As for doggy sweaters, they're easy to hand wash, so he can take care of that himself. But I'm sure that tiny cabin village will get hit with bedbugs now and then, considering you can pick them up most anywhere, especially by riding public transit or grabbing clothes one finds on the street or even at a thrift store. But I'm also sure if or when that happens, he'll blame me for the bugs. Even if they started in someone else's shelter, if they start in his cabin, it'll be even worse. So a new worry, one that depresses me for a while when considering the possible negative repercussions from Deke's immature mindset, but I'm over it, and will cross that bridge when I come to it, should the bedbug issue arise again. Let's fast forward now to when I returned hovel after Deke woke me up at 5:30 a.m. I first used the restroom to relieve myself, so I wouldn't have to do that an hour or so later, that I might resume a deep sleep undisturbed. Didn't take long to return to Dreamville, and boy did I have a whopper of a dream. And upon awakening around 9:30 a.m., I rolled over and said to myself, "Oh, I'm so glad it was only a dream." It was actually an amazing dream, though I'm glad one aspect of it was only part of that dream and not reality. But I'll stop here and describe my dream in my next missive, Watson, which will arrive in your email box later today, I promise.